Jonathan India has more to prove this year than he has in his entire career. We'll tell you why on today's Locked On Reds. Let's go.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds, and my name is Jeff Carr. His name is Steve Offenbaker. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have turned an addiction to this team into information for you. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to us talk some Reds with you. Locked On Reds is, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every single day, and thank you to our everydayers out there. Really appreciate you being a part of the show. If you're new to the show, make sure you jump in the comment section here on YouTube. You hit us up on Twitter. You can hit me up at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can hit Steve up at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs, and you can check out the show at Locked On Reds. There's no Fs in that. On today's podcast, we got a lot to get to because Jonathan India, according to reports from the Inquirer and Charlie Goldsmith, is close to getting back into the game. And I think that there is more pressure on him than there is any other Cincinnati Reds player. We're also going to dive into our bold predictions. We haven't done this yet. I don't know why we haven't done this yet, but we're diving into our bold prediction. Our first my first bold prediction and Steve's first bold prediction of spring training will be coming up here later on in the episode. Plus, we're going to respond. I think there was a lot of folks that don't understand the load management rest part of baseball, and we're going to really dive into that. Plus, we are 22 days away from opening day. So we're going to talk about the best number 22 to wear them. Let's put it this way. It's between Dan Driessen and Billy Hatcher. We'll talk about that later, though. Before we
get into any of that, let's shout out the sponsor of today's podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by those folks over there. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use the code all lowercase lockedonmlb for your first deposit match of up to $100.
Yeah, and that's, I think where we ought to start here is with Jonathan India, because there was a piece about him recently from Charlie Goldsmith, really just yesterday, that reported he is going to be he's going to be ready for opening day, and he's going to be in spring training games by the end of this week. That was what Charlie said. He didn't say it's hopeful. He didn't say the Reds are thinking. He didn't say David Bell's positive prognostication of medical records had this to say about Jonathan India. He said, boom, this is what's going to happen. And I think that when you add in the fact that he is no longer the everyday second baseman, when you add in the fact that he came into camp hurt and he was behind schedule from everyone else, and when you add in the fact he's got to learn the outfield, a place he's never played before, there is no one with more pressures on their shoulders for 2024 than Jonathan India.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate, Jeff. The fact of the matter is Jonathan India is not only, we've talked about he's trying to find what his place is going to be, what his lane is going to be, what he's going to be able to do to help this team. We've talked about all those things, but the fact of the matter is this is also a fight for Jonathan India to remain relevant. It's also a fight for him to keep his career moving in the right direction. There is a lot of talent on this team, and there are a lot of guys that are younger, that are better, that are faster, that are more versatile than what Jonathan India is up until this point. He is really going to have to fight his way into being, or at least into justifying him being in this lineup day in and day out. And I don't anticipate that he's going to be an everyday starter, but he will be one of those guys that I talked about on yesterday's show, Jeff. One of those guys that he may not start, but you'll see him most days. He'll come in when there's a pitching change and the Reds get into the opposing bullpen and they're swapping out handedness and moving things around. Jonathan India will find his way into games then, and he will get the occasional start as well. I did find it interesting that we heard nothing. And then bam, he's going to play this week. He's been in the outfield. He's been working with Eric the Red. He's going to be a great left fielder. I mean, that's a lot of update from zero. They went from 0 to 60 on Jonathan India talk.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to read the different quotes that Charlie had in this article, there were quotes from Colin Cowgill, who works with the outfielders and works with the defensive players and things like that. And he says that he believes Jonathan India will play very well in left field. Colin Cowgill is kind of, running the drills, how to track a fly ball, things like that. They kind of described it as a receiver that was getting off the line of scrimmage and trying to track a throw from the quarterback into his glove, things like that. And Jonathan India loves football, so he was kind of able to kind of connect that metaphorically for him. But it is such a different position. He has played second base and he has played third base. He played the infield for his entire professional career. He has not been an outfielder. And he's coming into this off this plantar fasciitis that up until the point that we saw this report that he's coming back soon, he's going to be in games, he's going to be ready for opening day, all we had heard is he's got to build up tolerance. He's got to learn how to deal with the pain. He's got to learn how to play through this plantar fasciitis thing, the torn fascia in his foot. I think I'm saying that wrong. I can't remember.
Got it.
Hey, I said it right. But he has to learn how to deal with all of this. And now it's like, boom, he's back. I really feel like, and again, we're talking about individually. We love to talk about the team here on the Locked On Reds podcast and kind of draw that all in for a team-based conversation. This is specifically for him, for his major league future. This is the most pressure he's probably ever felt.
Yeah, and I want to be skeptical. I mean, what else was Cowgill going to say when he talked to the media? He wasn't going to tell Charlie Goldsmith, India's look terrible out there. He can't run a route. I think my grandma runs better routes than he does. Like,
I have to have two cutoff men for him.
Yeah, he couldn't say those things, but I'm trying not to be that cynical. I'm trying to at least be open-minded to the fact that the reason we haven't heard anything is because they didn't want to say those things, and that they really have been working with Jonathan India, and Eric Davis has been spending a lot of time with Jonathan India,
which he has.
And Eric Davis. Eric Davis is not playing this week, and Jonathan India is going to get into games this week now.
Man, we really are winning the World Series. Eric Davis is back.
He looks ready, and I think now is the time they're bringing that information forward, and we will see Jonathan India as early as today. Now that article is out today, tomorrow, we will see him. We'll see him in the outfield, and they believe that he has improved enough and learned the route running enough and done enough things to look competent out there. I really think that's what the radio silence was about, so that they could give the answer that they gave and mean it and put him into a game.
Something else, and maybe let's maybe put a number on this, because something else that was in this article from Charlie is that they basically said he's going to be an everyday player between moving from first, left, and DH, and maybe just a tiny bit of second base as well, especially if Matt McLain is not healthy and ready to go for opening day. But all reports are he's going to be back in a spring training game here soon and be ready for opening day. I don't know that I would put India at the top of the list for games played of the Reds this year. In fact, Steve, I'm going to say it. I think Jonathan India doesn't play more than 110 games this year.
All right. Jonathan India doesn't start 110 games. Jonathan India will play in 120 to 125 games. He got into 119 last season with injuries, with being nicked up. I think with this rotation and pinch hit at bats and substitutions, total appearances, he'll get into between 120 to 125 if he's healthy.
That's true. And the plantar fasciitis thing, man, I don't know. I keep coming back to that. This is what Moose dealt with. And once Moose had this, Moose was useless. Now, I'm not thinking that Jonathan India is going to be useless, but this really hurts my optimism. I mean, every dayers know how optimistic I am about this team. And here I am telling you he's not going to play 110 games. So this hurts me to not be optimistic about it, but that's just kind of where I am on this. I really, really think that 2024, nobody has more pressure on them than Jonathan India does.
Yeah, he's got a lot to prove, and he's going to have to really work and scrap and fight for the playing time to even be able to prove it. Coming up, Jeff, you mentioned earlier, it is time once again for bold predictions. We are going to be making our bold predictions. I don't know what yours is. You don't know what mine is. And we're going to do this over the course of several episodes, one each day as we move forward towards opening day. And coming up, I am going to tell you why my prediction, if it comes true, will have a lot of Dodgers fans crying into their Dodger dog. We've got that coming up in just a minute. Before we get to that, I want to shout out the sponsor of today's episode. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. That is the basketball court, folks. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for the playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of year. Get in on the excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. Now you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks. You can also put together some prize picks with MLB season stats. PrizePicks has Hunter Green's season strikeout total over under at 189.5. Jeff has told you a couple times now he thinks Hunter Green's going to get to 200, so you may want to take the over there. They also had an over under on the total multi-homer games for Elly De La Cruz at 1.5. So if you think twice in 2024, Ellie's going to have multi-home run games, you're going to want to take the over on that one as well. To get in on the action, just download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for your first deposit match of up to $100. Again, download the app and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for up to $100 match on your first deposit. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts like Jeff and I, plus all of the national shows on the Locked On network covering every league. Just go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Coming up on tomorrow's show, like I said, more bold predictions. We are going to be bold predicting the heck out of things between now and opening day, and we're going to get that started right here, right now, Jeff. I am going to go first. I have my first bold prediction. You mentioned my man, Matt McLain. My bold prediction is he will be the starting second baseman in the All-Star game over Mookie Betts in 2024.
See, and this is the key, because bold predictions means that a lot has to go right. And the All-Star game is something that so much would have to go right. It's not just that he performs well. It's also that people vote for him. Like, he's got to get more votes than Mookie Betts. Bold predictions mean it's not likely to happen. And the whole point is, when you make a bold prediction, the other person or people have to go, oh. And I go, beating Mount Mookie Betts for the All-Star game, because so many Dodgers fans love to stuff that ballot. You can trust two things that are going to happen at the beginning of every baseball season, or the first half. The Dodgers and their Braves fans are going to stuff the ballots. That's what's going to happen. So for the Reds to have somebody beat out a Dodger, that's bold.
And here's why I think it's true, Jeff, because I called our friends over at the Cincinnati Reds ticket office the other day to make my arrangements for the summer. You know, I try and get in some of the fancy sections on at least one of my visits, and Auntie Darlene made a request to come back to Cincinnati, so we're doing it up. Bringing Auntie Darlene back. We're going to do our thing. And there are a lot of sections already sold out. There are a lot of things that are normally easy to get that are already done for the year. There's a lot more people engaged with this team. And what we have seen when people are engaged with this team, they can overcome the stuffing of the ballot box. We saw it in 2015 when the Reds, by God, wanted their third baseman to start in the All-Star game, and Mr. Todd Frazier won the vote. The Reds and the Cincinnati Reds fans have shown they can get it done. I think that Matt McLain is going to come out and be better than he was last year. Yeah, there'll be a little bit of a dip in his slugging. That's not going to maintain where it was. But overall, he is going to be better. He's going to be healthy, and he's going to be the guy that drives this offense. He's going to be near the top of this lineup getting things done. I think he's going to get national recognition. We're going to see him on SportsCenter a lot. We're going to see him on highlights a lot, whether it's him doing something or being brought in to score by somebody else. I think of all the guys on this team, he's the one that has a shot to shock the world, so to speak, and get enough votes to overcome the Dodgers.
He's the kind of guy too. Like if I'm the Reds, I'm putting a lot of clips of him post game. I'm putting a lot of clips of him in the clubhouse and things like that. Like he is a very, very easy guy to root for. And if you do not know who Matt McLain is, if you're not a Reds fan, Reds fans know who Matt McLain is. But if you're from outside the Reds country sphere, then doing that would go a long way. And I feel like that is where people start to vote for players. They know who they are. It's not just the stats. I mean, I'm sure that there are some people who get into the all-star ballot and they say, who's doing the best right now? I'll vote for that player. Most people vote for their favorite team's player. And if their favorite team's player isn't that great, they don't think they're going to make it or something like that, then they look for who they know. Get Matt McLain in front of people. Like the Reds have a couple of different guys who they can really get in front of people. Ellie's already kind of there. They've done a good job of getting him. Other people know who he is. Matt McLain isn't necessarily known. And they definitely, I think he would benefit greatly from that, not just in the all-star voting, but in other things as well. I think that would be a very good way, and probably a little bit on the Reds social media staff, which is amazing. They do a fantastic job. But that, maybe that's a little bit of a charge for them. Like, hey, put Matt McLain in front of people this year because people are going to gravitate toward him. I like that. So my bold prediction. Here we go. One of my first, because we got a lot here on the Locked On Reds podcast. My first bold prediction for you here. The Reds, this team that has all the questions, that has a floor which people don't necessarily know how to define, but a ceiling that no one can see, will not have a losing month. They will not go 1 month this season and finish under 500 in that month. Last year we saw it in the middle of summer. They had some really good months. And they also had some months toward the end of the year, like August and September. September was a little bit better, but August was horrid. And of course, April was horrid on the wins-loss record. They're not going to have a single month this year, bold prediction, that they finish under 500.
That's a pretty good one, because for that to come true, they have to play consistent baseball for 162 games. And, they're a young team. That's a big ask. Can it be done? I think it can be done. My important takeaways from that is the month of April. We have seen this team time and time again play horrible in the month of April. And sometimes that's the difference in the season. You're pretty much done before you hit May 1st. And this team cannot do that. This team has to come out and hit the ground running. And I think they can. And I think they will. Interesting. Not a 500 or better every month of the season. I like it.
Yes.
I think that it can be done. I would like it a lot better if we were in the old schedule format with a division heavy opponents, but we're not in that place anymore. It might make it a little bit harder. But this pitching staff has been upgraded for the starting rotation. With or without Nick Lodolo, it's been upgraded. We do not have Luis Cessa. We do not have Connor Overton. The bullpen has been upgraded with Emilio Pagan, Nick Martinez, Brent Suter. I always do that. It's better. It's a better bullpen. I think that makes a difference. I think you're right. I think it is possible. They'll really have to work for it, but it's possible.
I think something too, like last year, there were moments, and we could point them out, where the lineup did amazing, but the pitching torpedoed it. Or there was a game where the pitching did amazing, and the lineup torpedoed it by scoring 1 run or something like that, or no runs, getting shut out. I think it's going to flip. Not necessarily that they're going to, have complete baseball 1 through 162. I think it's when the pitching staff is down, the lineup's going to do enough to cover it. When the lineup is down, the pitching staff's going to do enough to cover it.
So what you're saying is they'll play like it was a Luke Weaver start every single time. That's what you're telling me. That's what I'm hearing from you.
It's the only reason that guy made 21 starts. Luke Weaver made 21 starts in 2023. Like, that's the other part of this idea that the Reds won't have a losing month. Like, I don't understand. And again, this is where the projection systems just don't make sense to me. How did you go from 82 wins And replacing Luke Weaver with Frankie Montas, or, healthy young pitcher, insert name here, and you got worse? Ain't happening. And I think that's a big reason. Like, I get it. It's still, you could still go through cold stretches and things like that, which is why this is a bold prediction. It is not an easy thing to have a year where all of your months are winning months. I mean, just ask the Texas Rangers. There were points during the middle of the summer where people thought they weren't going to make the playoffs. Like, they had the best lineup most of the way through that season, but there were some times where the pitching really torpedoed them.
There were times where our Locked On Astros guys pretty much thought they had that division sewed up, right? Like, they had it all locked up.
Where our Locked On Mariners guys thought they were making the playoffs, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The Rangers came back, took that spot. So there's ebbs and flows of a season. I'm telling you, the ebbs and flows of the season are, they might go 500 in a month, but they ain't gonna go under 500. And
it is bold. It is accomplishable, but it will be difficult. I like it. I'm with you there. I'm with you. We're strong. We're coming out strong with this segment, Jeffrey. 2 good, strong, bold predictions. That's right.
And we'll have more tomorrow, so make sure you tune in. But let's move along, because there was a response to the rest and the load management episode that we had yesterday. So we are going to tell you why rest is important in Major League Baseball. And we're 22 days away from opening day. Who's the best number 22 ever to wear in Cincinnati Reds history? Find out next. Before we get into that, though, I want to tell you about one of our sponsors, and that is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP that you need and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. In between episodes, you can follow us on Twitter, X. You can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can follow Steve at S. Offenbaker. There's 2 Fs in that. And you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. No Fs in that. Plus, join the Locked On Reds Discord page. A lot of great folks talking Reds baseball all throughout the year, in between episodes, during games, after games, before games, all that in between. We got a link in the description of today's episode. We invite you to join. Be happy to see you there. Also, bookmark InsideTheReds.com. I have my ultimate guide to the 2024 Cincinnati Reds that is coming out in pieces. We've got the infield, we've got the outfield, we've got the starters, we got the bullpen. Coming soon, we'll have the ultimate guide to the 2024 catching battery. Well, what do we go with on that one? Catching battery?
We never really landed in a good place on that one. Because the battery is the catchers and the pitchers together. So, like,
right.
I don't know.
Catching tandem, something. I don't know. Anyway,
in the comments, if you've got a good idea, put it in the comments. We're open.
I know we've done this before. I know we've done this before. I just can't remember what we circled in on. Anyway, I know what we circle in on this, because David Bell, Nick Kroll have both made a point to say they are prioritizing rest. They are prioritizing players' health throughout the season. They want everybody to be as close to 100% as possible. And I know that's not, perfectly possible, but everybody to be as fresh as they can be for the stretch run. For some reason, people were confused by that.
Oh, there was a little heat in the comment section yesterday, Jeff. Some of my favorites were, why do they need rest? They sprint like 2 times in a game and only are really doing anything for like 18 minutes during the course of a game going on. And what do they need to rest from? And, I hope, I mean, I didn't read any like thing in there that made me believe it was tongue in cheek. These seemed like legit takes that people were posting. I would hope people understand that these guys work out every day. They stretch and throw and have to get loose every day. They are doing activity every day, and muscles fatigue over time. They need rest. Mentally, I can't imagine the concentration that is involved in trying to figure out if Hunter Green is throwing 100-mile-an-hour fastball at you or an off-speed something that's going to fall to the floor, and the amount that you have to be dialed in for that. There is such thing as mental fatigue. You do get tired. I'm sure everyone has experienced that. These guys need opportunities to rest. It is a long, long season. There is no good reason to run guys into the ground and have them not be available for the playoffs. We saw that last year with the Reds bullpen. Too much was asked of them for too long, and they ran out of gas. David Bell is making a concerted effort to keep things under control from the beginning, and I agree with it. You won't hear me say that a lot with what David Bell does sometimes, but for me, this is a smart play for an organization that clearly believes there is playoff baseball in its future.
I think too, like, people are getting ahead of themselves if they're worried about the rest factor of this, because I think this is kind of a flex by Nick Kroll and a flex by David Bell. This roster has the ability to give players days off. It's not as if they're forcing a square peg into a round hole and they're saying, all right, we're going to give Ellie a day off and we're going to fit, I don't know, we're going to put Eugenio Suarez at shortstop. It's not as if they're giving Tyler.
That's where you want to go. That's the example.
Like, they're not putting
Thanks
people out of position. No, I know you once upon a time. But they're not putting people out of position to give other people days off. This team has so much depth. We've said this time and time again. Every day will know. We have said how much there's talent everywhere in this organization. The Reds would be dumb. I'm going to go with that in lieu of another word. To not use that depth, to say, nah, we got these guys that can play, but we got to get 162 games for Ellie.
And you can tell when a guy runs out of steam. And I think some of these same people talking about, oh, why they got to rest? What are they tired from? Will be the same people going, can you believe that David Bell put that guy in 160 games and now he has nothing left for the playoffs? I think those would be the same people. I think that's the same people.
Right. And good teams, not because they have to, but because they have these different guys and stuff like that. They might have a couple of people play 162, but go look at the Braves last year. Tell me how many guys played 162 games on that team. Go look at the Dodgers last year. Tell me how many people played 162 games. It's probably exactly the players you would think. And then the rest of them, they did this thing where they kind of rotated them. They put them in good positions. They kept them healthy. And you're going to say, well, Jeff, they ended up losing in the playoffs anyway. Still, the point of the matter is you want them fresh for October. And I am not going to sit here and say, no, you have got to run these boys into the ground. You have got to make sure that they are just dead tired by October, because how dare they complain because they're playing baseball and that's their job. No, there's a way to run a team.
Before you segue into our favorite number 22, I do want to answer you on the Braves and the Dodgers last season. The Braves had one player playing 162 games, and that was their first baseman, Matt Olson. The Los Angeles Dodgers had nobody.
Not Acuna.
No, the Dodgers had nobody play 162. Freddie Freeman played in 161. Again, a first baseman.
Oh, he was close.
So very close, but that's it. You're right.
I don't, this is not a thing that the Reds do and no one else does. This is a thing that every team wants to have, this ability that they don't have to rely on guys to play 162 games, because they want them to be ready and raring to go and not dealing with nagging injuries and things like that once October begins. And that is where we're going to leave that, because now let's do something a little bit fun, because we are 22 days away from opening day. We've actually gotten away from this a little bit. I tried to do it on the live show this past Friday and things like that. But the best number 22 to lace them up for your Cincinnati Reds is between Dan Driessen and Billy Hatcher, which really is it's two different arguments for me. It's, best World Series ever, as opposed to having a little bit longer of a career. And he had to replace Tony Perez, so there was a little bit of that in there. So I don't know. I kind of defer to you on this one, Steve. What do you think?
Listen, I love Billy Hatcher. I loved him as a player here. I loved him as a coach here. He had, he was only here for 3 years though. Wearing that number 22 as far as playing time goes. I really think you got to look at Dan Driessen and go with him as the best player to ever wear number 22. This one's hard for me because, like I said, Billy Hatcher was one of my favorite guys from that 90s team. He was a lot of fun. And then, of course, on this list also having worn number 22 is Corky Miller. And you can't have a conversation about this number and not at least mention Corky Miller, just because he's just so darn beloved around here for just him being him. Love that guy. But yeah, I think you hit it on the head with Dan Driessen. I think he's the guy.
I think too, it's interesting to look when you look at the history, because our favorite website in the world, baseballreference.com, has the history of the number 22 for the Cincinnati Reds. You don't have to go that far to see there was a big gap. And I think it was just the Reds being like, this number's cursed because Eric Milton wore this number.
Eric Milton shade, are you?
Eric
All right.
Milton, who, good Lord, I mean, you talk about back, mid 2000s, the offseason when they signed him, they're just like, look, we're bringing in pitching help. Then he sets the record for most homers allowed in a season. But you see him wear it for 3 years, and then nobody wears it for 12 years. They go a whole dozen years without anybody wearing the number 22. And then Derek Dietrich's just like, nah, man, I got this.
I got it.
Which, by the way, was there, I don't like, look, there's a lot of cool guys in baseball. There's a lot of cool guys in Reds history. If there's anybody cooler than Derek Dietrich? Look, I get it. Derek Dietrich was not like a consistent performer who went crazy and was this amazing player. But the month of May in that season, what was it, 2016, 2017?
2019.
2019. Look at that.
2019.
The month of May, Derek Dietrich, 2019. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look it up. I mean, he went nuts. That month, it felt like he was going to do everything. He hit all the homers. He had the eye black that, was crazy. He had the chains. He had the, getting the bees and stuff. You remember that when the bees
getting
were
the
there?
Bees. Yep. Getting the bees.
So many different, like, it's funny to think of the amount of time that he was here and this overall impact on a team that's been around for over 150 years. And you're just like, guys here for 1 year. And you think of Greg Vaughn, you think of some different players like that. Performance wise, you're never going to argue that it was Derek Dietrich, but like just the way that he felt, the fan feel of Derek Dietrich, legendary.
Absolutely legendary. And I think that is a great spot to go ahead and wrap it up for today. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Reds. Thanks for always making us your first listen every day. Everydayers coming up tomorrow. More bold predictions. They'll be as good or better, we promise. Until then, Jeff, tell folks what they can expect from me and you.
They can expect us to be locked in on the spring training action out in Goodyear. They can expect us to be locked in on when they get some cut downs, who's being sent down to minor league camp and all that good stuff. And they can expect us to be Locked On Reds every single day.
Oh, Eric Milton shade. You're going to get a DM from somebody.
He stunk. He was